utilities use as a joke. Not realistic.
And what makes it even worse is that they're doing it virtually. It's not even coming from, most of it's not even coming from the here. It's bizarre.
Yep, they're losing tons of money transporting that energy.
They do
Tons
have
of energy lost.
they did put in a few years ago infrastructure to get wind from eastern New Mexico into Tucson. And boy, did they have a big publicity campaign about that. And, we were like, well, why can't you just make it easier for people to get rooftop solar in the Tucson metro area and maybe build a solar farm, near town? And they've just, dragged their feet on that. Yeah.
In my last presentation in this series, I showed a lot of data about how much land space it would actually take to power the entire grid with solar, and it's so small. People get so upset about land use, but really it's such a small slice of the pie if you built out solar.
One of the more interesting.
I think people don't think about the fact that we could also, you don't have to use a lot of land if you use rooftops and buildings and car parks. There are lots of ways we can do this. It doesn't have to be on land, and it can be over farms, over the agrivoltaics could take.
I love agrivoltaics too.
I mean, it's
brilliant.
It's insane that we're not doing more of that. They're doing it all over the world. Why can't they be doing it here? We have more sun than any place else, just about any place else.
Yeah, I didn't include this in this presentation, but the Institute for Local Self-Reliance does a grading system for electricity and power systems in the United States. And something that I thought was kind of hilarious, as a former teacher myself, no one got an A, not even California, nobody. And the majority of states have an F.
Right. I was Barbara sent out an article, a link to an article that I finally got around to reading today, and it was about how in Australia, for instance, they're taking advantage of it to the point where 3 hours a day, everyone in Australia gets free electricity. They have so much that they're able to just give it to you for free for 3 hours a day.
Yeah, Australia and India now are offering free electricity to residents. And of course, Australia and Germany, I talked about this a little bit in my last talk as well, but they won the race. They were able to put renewables on the grid fastest. They did that through permitting policies and strategies and a little bit more control, of course, by the government rather than the utilities themselves. So they were able to do that in the 2000s, and now they are ahead of the race.
Yeah.
Right now, Australia is deploying the Common Smart Inverter Profile. It's this set of standards that was created by California, and California is kind of very slowly rolling it out. They've required it for the utilities, but Australia just took it and ran with it. And so it'll get even better. India as well, they adopted a few particular standards that allow them to balance the grid. And they gave 10 million rooftops free solar. 10 million people with free solar energy that's connected to the grid and balances the grid.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And this article pointed out that all of this is going on everywhere else. And yet here we sit in the United States where the solar cells were invented.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always that way. Everything gets invented here and then implemented elsewhere.
Everywhere else.
Yeah.
Because we have so much money in our politics. Basically, that's what it boils down to.
But we also have money in our research, which is why it gets invented here. Or we did.
Well, I think what's really frustrating about the situation here in Arizona is, well, this is everywhere, I'm sure, in the U.S. now, that the utilities just look at solar as, it's another component. They don't appreciate the scalability. Yes, you can put solar
Yes.
on your rooftop and probably power your entire house, but they have to always think about building it in big facilities way away, and it's like, oh, we have to have new wires now.
And it's
And
because they actually hate it because they know that it's free. The fuel is free and they don't want
yeah,
that. They can't make money on that because of the
they can't
way
make money
we
off of
allow
it.
them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I will try to touch on over and over again today is how utilities make money for shareholders.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
Okay.
Well, we are coming up on 11:05, and I do want to get going pretty soon here. So welcome everyone. There might be some people who come in as we go along. For those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Erin Mahan. I am a board member at the Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance. I am also the Vice President of Membership and Regulatory Affairs at the Sunspec Alliance. Sunspec Alliance helps renewables come onto the grid faster. Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance helps everyone understand the importance of why we need them. So today I'm going to do a little bit of both. I'm going to talk to you about community choice energy, a passion of mine. This is a passion of mine because as a millennial looking towards the future and also the past, I have noticed that IOUs do not serve the needs and the technology that we currently have. So it's a historical institution to have utilities own all of the wires and transmission, and also for us in Arizona, the billing. Arizona stands at a really pivotal moment. Our communities are feeling the pressures of climate change. We need to keep our air conditioners on much longer in the year, and we feel the rising electricity costs. So community choice energy offers this structural alternative, and it will bring the purchasing power of electricity and energy back to the people. I say back because maybe 100 years ago, a few more, 150 years ago, there was more of a community-owned energy landscape. And for the last 100 years, we've used this institution of buying power from utilities, and it needs to change because the technology has advanced and we're ready to change it. So in the states that have adopted community choice energy, they've learned that the IOU, the utility structure, doesn't work anymore. It doesn't make sense. And Arizona deserves that same dignity of choice, the choice to choose whether or not we're buying energy from the IOU, from the utility, or if we're buying it from a community-led organization that has our thoughts and goals in mind. If we choose this path, I think energy historians will write favorably about Arizona as a national leader, not only in manufacturing, like semiconductor manufacturing, and in data centers, but also how we responded to the need for extra energy on the grid in a way that chooses energy resilience over a fear of change. So today I will invite you to imagine an electricity model that honors both environmental stewardship and local prosperity. The content in these slides is based on contemporary research about community choice energy programs and their environmental and economic value. So please write questions in the chat, just so you remember them, but I will stop halfway through because I want to make sure that we talk about some of the issues we're facing in Arizona specifically. So this is an actual picture of me from August when I saw my electric bill. And it was only made worse by the fact that I know next year that will be 14% higher. Arizona Public Service will probably increase my electric bill by 14% next year. That's crazy. It's especially crazy to think about how American households spend 17% of the average household income already on electricity from their utility. So I also think about how the utility plans to spend $5.3 billion to build out gas pipelines in the next 10 years. So these figures reflect the rate filings of Arizona Public Service and their capital expenditure plans. So if you would like to learn more about how much they plan to spend on gas and oil, you can look there, but it's pretty disturbing. On top of that, I think about how the shareholders of the utility get a 9% quarterly return on investment. So when families open their electricity bills, they have to confront not only the cost of this system, but a system that's shaped not by public interest, but by shareholder interests. There they are. So how did we get here? I think to understand these present challenges, we need to revisit this historical architecture of the grid and how transmission emerged as a natural monopoly, quote unquote, and distribution networks were treated as franchises. So in 1889, the United States' first long-distance electricity transmission line went from Willamette Falls Generation Station out to Portland, Oregon. This was really the beginning of the wires and transmission and distribution being owned by the utilities. In 1914, and then legislated in 1920, the US federal government decided that transmission cost required economies of scale, true, obviously, and therefore natural monopolies. So investors formed utility companies, which we know today, and I will refer to as IOUs, investor-owned utilities. Then in 1978, we saw a little breakdown in this system. In 1978, the Public Utility Regulatory Policies Act required utilities to buy power from non-utility generators. So electricity generation is no longer a natural monopoly, but the distribution, the wires and the transmission still is. So generation today is largely competitive. We have independent power producers and public power systems, federal hydropower, and they shoulder the majority of the supply of power. But utilities do still own some generation as well. So the IOU, again, the IOU is the investor-owned utility, and they own the wires. The generator, the electricity generator, is often private, sometimes owned by the IOU, and they own the plant, the generation station. So the utilities today, like I said, the IOUs, they own the distribution and transmission lines. But when the IOUs own everything, there's no competition. And lack of competitive pressure has produced underinvestment in infrastructure and therefore tragedy and higher electricity bills. No competitive discipline meant that long-term safety was deferred. And so the example I'm using here is the Camp Fire from California. This was not a random tragedy. This was a predictable outcome of a structure that permitted decades of underinvestment while guaranteeing revenue recovery to the shareholders. So community choice energy is a model that is not obligated to pay shareholders, and it also is obligated by public good, meaning it probably won't leave maintenance undeferred and then charge ratepayers when something goes wrong. So is there a better way? We are not obligated to accept this investor-owned utility model. It is a model of the past. We want an electricity model that values my community and our carbon neutrality plan, so leaning into renewable resources rather than spending $5.3 billion on gas and oil. We want an electricity model that offers a choice of electricity provider rather than mandating one. We have choices for everything else in our lives. The examples often given are our choice of milk at the grocery store. It's no longer provided by the guy who comes to your door and gives you one type of milk. Another example is our choice of telecom services, which was broken up and unbundled and peeled apart in the 80s and the 90s. We want an electricity model that allows energy procurement in the interest of local governments and consumers, not in the interest of shareholders. So a community choice energy model gives local governments the autonomy to procure electricity from renewable sources on behalf of the residents. It replaces this monopoly supply with genuine choice and aligns energy planning with community values. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Just questions right now, comments later. Kevin, will you tell me if anyone has their hand up?
Yes, uh, sister, I think we are going to, I'm going to moderate on, on the questions. So with me, first of all, let me start by asking only one question about the electronic actually, sorry for that. Community choice energy. I wanted to know the sustainability of the community choice energy. So kindly just expound on that as we go on, please.
Was the question for stability of community choice energy?
Yes, sustainability. Yes.
Oh, sustainability. Oh,
Sustainability.
great question. Great question. My favorite figure in this entire presentation that you will see is that the Tucson Community Choice Energy Study evaluated not only ratepayer savings, but also carbon emissions savings. And that was done by Russell Lowe's, who I think is on this call. Thank you, Russell, for promoting this important piece of information. The carbon emissions that each household would save from community choice energy would actually equal 1/2 to 2/3 the carbon emissions of driving a gas vehicle for an entire year. So that's great. That is a significant carbon reduction. And that's because community choice energy prefers to buy renewable energy rather than working off of this gas and oil model, gas and oil based model, where the investor owned utilities are buying a really small percentage of renewable energy. Okay, so
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. Any others? All right, we will wait then until a little bit later and I'll get the rest of the questions. So let's talk about alternative models outside of this investor-owned utility model, the better ways. So public power, so municipal-owned, city-owned transmission has a very long lineage, all the way since the 1880s. Cities like San Antonio, Tacoma, Washington, and Los Angeles, California, built institutions that safeguarded affordability. And they also were civically accountable. So their histories remind us that energy systems can be governed for public good and they can stand the test of time as well. So energy in San Antonio continues today as the nation's largest city-owned electric and gas utility. And then in Tacoma and Los Angeles, the persistence of hydro energy reinforced this public ownership legacy. So in an era of rising fossil fuel prices, they were able to keep their electricity bills down thanks to the abundant hydro energy. So municipalization had a renaissance in the 2000s. More states, more cities looked into municipalization, and also Los Angeles grew its municipalization program. And like I said, there was this telecom breakup in the 80s and 90s. And I think that this municipalization renaissance is a tail end effect of that. People saw that they were being overcharged. They didn't want to pay the data and roaming fees of the investor-owned utilities, so they looked towards municipalization. And it was also the birth of community choice energy programs in the 2000s. So they've already been around now for quite a few years, and they are gaining momentum. And that's why our current situation is at that of grid and investor-owned utility independence. So we see in the 2020s, some maturity in the CCE landscape. Not only is it expanding and more states are legislating to allow CCEs, but also the CCE programs that existed in the 2000s are getting more mature, and they're producing benefits that they knew they would be able to produce. Also in this era, we have microgrids. Microgrids are battery plus energy storage, or battery energy storage systems plus solar. And those community microgrids come in handy when you have horrible problems, horrible disasters like Hurricane Sandy. So resilience is becoming very popular. And also virtual power plants, which I won't explain too much, but they are a new technology advancement that will allow society to control energy prices much better in the future. So Calpine Community Energy did just release an awesome study, and I wanted to show you this part. So electric rates in states with a utility monopoly have increased faster, significantly faster, than states with competitive energy markets. So these alternative models are a competition to the traditional investor-owned utility model, and that competition drives rates down in those states. CCEs have consistently offered cheaper rates than the IOUs in 9 out of 10 years. The only exception was in 2021 when the investor-owned utility, the IOU, charged CCEs more for the exit fee. So CCEs do need to pay the utilities an exit fee for taking their customers off of their hands. So like I said, today we have new tools like the virtual power plants that will coordinate thousands of small assets into reliable and flexible resources that will strengthen the grid in the future. So these are the states that either currently offer or they are exploring CCE, Community Choice Energy. I call it Community Choice Energy because that's what we call it in Arizona. However, in other states, they call it Community Choice Aggregation. And that word aggregation, it means that they are buying the energy. They're aggregating the energy procurement for their community. So it is the same thing, CCE, CCA. So CCE programs, they raise renewable standards, like I mentioned. They stabilize our rates, stabilize electricity rates, and they retain those local revenues. They stimulate job growth, accelerate electrification, and they build a more resilient energy landscape. These benefits are not theoretical. Therefore, states have really taken up the initiative to integrate CCE into state-level policy or local policy in order to adopt this model. So I listed a few benefits, but let's dive into them. First of all, environmental stewardship. Like I said, CCE programs set higher renewable energy targets, and that eliminates as much carbon as 1 year of driving a gas vehicle per household. Local reinvestment. CCE revenues go back to the community instead of enriching distant shareholders. Workforce development. CCEs create local jobs by driving demand for solar and battery installation, EV infrastructure, and more. Resilience. Local solar, storage, and then solar and storage together, microgrid projects keep critical services and neighborhoods powered during grid disruptions. And rate stability. CCEs insulate the customer rates from the fuel price volatility, transmission surcharges, and legacy cost burdens that drive very sudden and unexpected investor-owned utility rate increases. Let's zoom in on local reinvestment because that is so cool and so important. And rate stability, because that is important to me. Otherwise, I will look like that ostrich again. Okay, so local reinvestment. When revenue stays at home, communities flourish. Incentives for solar installations, workforce development, and resilience upgrades can transform an energy ecosystem. So I've put these in 2 different categories, and you can see even more examples in this picture on the screen. So for rate reductions and keeping the households insulated from spiked IOU electricity bills, We have rate reductions also for low-income households. So taking care of our most vulnerable is important to the CCE, but it is not as important to the investor-owned utility. They are taking care of their shareholders. Disaster relief funding. CCEs have money. You can see it down in the very last column, right here-ish. Disaster relief funding for COVID, for hurricanes. They are taking care of people. Workforce education. See this guy, he's very happy because he has just been paid to take a workforce education program that will employ him for the rest of his life in an emerging field. That's awesome. And then there's also local reinvestments that have to do more with grid resilience, like net metering and home installation incentives. The more incentives you give people, the more solar panels they're going to put on the roof. The more solar panels on the roof, the more energy that is available to the grid. Also EV charging stations and fleets. So they're investing in EV charging stations, and these days with bidirectional charging, those also support the grid. And resilience tech overall, so microgrids, resilience hubs, which we see a lot of in Texas. I would like to shout out Base Power is doing incredible things in Texas by providing resilience hubs as well as off-grid resilience solar and battery storage projects. So rate stability, I've mentioned this a few times, and this one's really serious. As you can see, the utility rates spike. They spike up, and they're more or less always higher than the CCE rate since 2021. Monopoly utilities recover wildfire costs and fuel spikes in the oil and gas price, and infrastructure expansions through customer bills. And CCEs, they pursue long-term renewable contracts that stabilize prices. So CCEs have this predictability. They know their community. They buy power for the long term, which makes prices more stable. So not only do they use long-term power purchasing agreements to lock in predictable prices, but rate forecasting is a lot easier when you're buying more renewables and at a community scale. So renewables make rate forecasting easier because they are not a fuel source that's extracted from the ground, and we need to depend on foreign adversaries to get access to it. CCEs use innovative, flexible, and attractive rate designs. And by that, I mean they are incentivizing people to go and be their customers. CCEs are introducing that competition to the market, and they are convincing people, like 85% or 90% of California has agreed to be part of a CCE because of these innovative, flexible, attractive rate designs. IOUs, on the other hand, are recovering wildfire settlements and upgrading and expansion costs through their bills. And they're also increasing rates to protect guaranteed shareholder returns. And to that, I say, yuck. That is not a great way to serve your community or to support the public good. Here's another example, utility versus CCE rates in the US. So the last example was from Ohio, and here it is in the greater US. You can see again that the utility rates are always higher, and they have peaks that the CCE rates do not have. So this is part of Roosevelt's Portland address. He went to Portland, Oregon, and gave this address, which was one of the first waves of public power activism. So nearly a century ago, Roosevelt cautioned that private interests often fail to keep rates reasonable. We are still having this conversation today. Markets without accountability tend to drift towards self-interest. Community procurement restores that balance back. So his quote says, "Many selfish interests in control of light and power industries have not been sufficiently far-sighted to establish low rates." We're still struggling with that today. This comes as part of his anti-monopoly sentiment and a pretty big collapse of private holding companies as well. So there is some political background to this. But there's also a public anger at high electricity prices during this time. So he was speaking to the public and saying, it's not okay to let selfish interests control something that is essential to you. All right, so back to the map of CCEs in the United States. I know that many people on this call are excited to learn more about the coming Community Choice Energy Program in Tucson. So there they are down there, happy cactus. They are ready to begin the CCE program in Tucson, and it is going to set a precedent across the state of Arizona. So today is talk about this reform movement and how our communities have the tools and technologies and the legal know-how to reclaim agency from the dominion of our investor-owned utilities. So I would like to talk a little bit about the City of Tucson's energy sourcing study done by GDS Associates. So GDS Associates ran this study using numbers provided by Tucson Electric Power, and they found that municipalization, so again, city ownership of the wires and transmission system, and community choice energy, so the system where the transmission is owned by the utilities, but the people procure the power themselves. They're both economically feasible and could be pursued simultaneously. So CCE procurement at high levels cuts household emissions, like we mentioned before. Tucson's total operating costs for a CCE would be about 500 million over 10 years to about 625 million. Let's compare that with the local IOU, TEP, their projected costs and the same services. So their projected costs, same services over 10 years, starts at 610 million and goes up to $1 billion. So that means that there's a $500 million difference in operating costs between the CCE and the IOU. I'd say that this is a very important difference. But the most impactful difference is the average customer savings. So the average customer saves 18% on their electrical bill annually through the Tucson Community Choice Energy model. And the revenue of the Community Choice Energy organization is about $800 million over 10 years. And again, they are happy little cacti down there. So I want to point out this calculation by Russell Lowe's for the, I want to point out this calculation by Russell Lowe's for the typical Tucson household. So the typical Tucson household is using 750 kilowatts a month. And let's look at two types of savings, their dollar savings and their carbon savings. The dollar savings, you can see the TEP bill is about 104 a month, and the CCE bill is about 92 a month. Of course, the TEP bill is about 89% gas and coal, whereas the CCE bill is 80% renewable energy. And that 80% is just a starting point. There's currently a municipalization effort in Ann Arbor that is going straight to 100%. They are going to supply 100% renewable energy from the get-go. And of course, Tucson will reach that point, but they think that starting with 80% will guarantee returns. Carbon savings. Again, Tucson Electric Power, about 90% gas and coal. CCE, renewable energy. There it is, 6 tons of CO2 saved per household. All right, I want to open up the floor. You can maybe raise your hand and Kevin can call on you if you would like to discuss this Tucson study or emphasize any points that I've made.
Thank you, Madam Erin. Thank you very much. It is time for the question. So members, you can ask, you can raise your hand so that I can direct the question to our speaker.
Let's go with Rolf.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rolf.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Kevin, for moderating. It's difficult to understand how the IOUs can maintain power so long and get away with what they're doing. And I'm curious how you consider the interplay between the politicians who are in charge in various communities and the IOUs and what the overlap is and how they've been able to maintain their strength. Because it's really, in a power company, a local utility that's supplying you with electricity, you would expect that the local community would be able to have more control.
Totally. Yeah. Essential need. Well, I will talk a lot more about the current political situation in Tucson and also in the state of Arizona and what it means for the development of a CCE. But I don't see them as mutually exclusive. I think people just need to become educated about how impactful a CCE would be on their bottom line as well. And as far as how utilities have been allowed to stay in power so long, well, they are considered a regulated monopoly. And of course, utilities like APS are owned by even larger shareholding companies that require profits. So the amount of power in lobbying that they have has been a major factor for how they have been able to increase rates and why they've been able to build out oil and gas. Lobbying is a huge factor. Thanks, Rolf. How about you, Garrett?
Thank you, Rolf. Perhaps, Madam Erin, I think can we ask? Can you take the question? You combine them so that you answer go, or you like to answer one by one.
Sure.
Well,
oh, Garrett put his hand down. Oh no, there you are. Okay.
I'm here.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
A lot of pressing of buttons.
Thank you, Garrett. Go on, please.
Thank you, Kevin. And Erin, thank you for this really great presentation on community choice energy. I'm so glad that you're sharing what you know about CCE with not just with other people in the state. So I'm a climate commissioner. I'm on my city's climate commission in Tucson, and I'm looking at ways that we can further promote CCE and get this policy enacted. I've noticed that there are two distinct differences in Arizona that makes us unique. One of them is that every place where CCE has started, there has either been an ISO or an RTO in the region where CCA is implemented. The other thing is that we arguably have the most powerful utility board in the country in Arizona. So it's not sufficient to simply pass legislation like they've done in Massachusetts or California. So I kind of want to get maybe this is kind of a high level question, but maybe get a sense of like what we would have to do, like where are our levers of power, where are our levers, who do we need to influence, what structures in government need to be set up, who needs to be influenced to promote this policy and get it passed.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. You and Rolf with these political questions. I will talk about the structure that we are taking to promote the CCE across Arizona and how this grassroots effort will have very high level impacts. So just one more slide until that. Thanks, Garrett. How about Bruce, please?
Thank you.
Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I was very curious that you kind of went a little too fast on the map, and maybe you're about to do this, but when you showed the map, unless I'm mistaken, both Virginia and Maryland were red, meaning they had adopted legislation,
Yes.
but there were no active programs. Why not? If we're going to
Yeah,
spend all of
I
our
knew someone
energy
would ask
trying-
about this.
I mean, if
So-
we're going to spend all our energy getting some kind of legislation passed or getting the utility commission to adopt it, how come they've done it already there, but then they got stuck?
They have a pretty good system of regulation for their utilities there. So their utilities are regulated by a board, like Garrett said. Ours in Arizona is very powerful, and they're often lobbied. And in Virginia and Maryland, they do not have as much lobbying for their regulation board. And so they have decided that the costs of maintaining their utility structure are going to be lower. And they also don't have some of the other rate increase issues that we are experiencing here, though they will. I think Virginia is about to have a serious rate increase issue because of the data centers. So we'll see what happens there. At least they've passed the legislation. I can't imagine legislation getting passed in Arizona and not doing something, just because we don't have the community structure that their regulatory body has.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Russell.
Well answered, Rizal. Please go on with your question.
Well, thanks for the presentation, and I'm sure there's more to come, but there are a few things I wanted to mention. One, I'm really glad that you're using community choice energy, because what the heck is aggregation? You can aggregate all kinds of things in engineering and in retail, purchases and all kinds of things. But so it tells you that it's community and it's energy. And then plug and play that Ben mentioned in the chat is something that I think will be a bigger thing in the future, not just plug and play, but completely converting over to solar with batteries, which I'm actually doing right. I'm in the middle of doing that right now.
Nice work.
We've had solar since 2013, and now we're adding more solar and we're adding batteries at the same time. And we'll be essentially off the grid mostly, like 95% of the time, roughly. And we would survive any kind of major blackout from the utilities, from going with so many
survive being a key word. It's hot here.
Yes, yeah. And it could kill millions of people if we had a blackout in the middle of, say 122-degree 5-day string. One thing I wanted to mention was the 9% quarterly comment that you meant. That's actually 9% annually that the utilities make. They don't make that
they
every
pay out
quarter.
quarterly dividends to sharedholders, though.
Yes, yeah. And they do dividends, and they have stock value increases and the like too. And then the ACC issue here is complicated or compounded. The problem is compounded because it's called the Arizona Corporation Commission, and nobody knows what that means. It automatically makes you glaze over. I have nothing to do with the incorporation. I'm not a corporation. Why would I be concerned about something called the Arizona Corporation Commission? So that really needs to be, every time we put any messaging about the Corporation Commission, we need to say the Electric Utility Regulator of Arizona, something like that, mixing that in with that. Thank you.
I totally agree. Like other regulators are called public utilities commissions. Makes things pretty easy.
I wanted to add, when we get to 100% renewable, it's a 98% reduction in CO2 in the electric sector. And as transportation becomes more of the electric sector with electric vehicles and mass transit, it'll become much more than about 66% or so of our entire CO2 is from vehicles and electric sector. So we would be reducing that dramatically through 100% renewable.
Thank you, Russell, so much. It is possible to get to 100% renewables, and it will have a dramatic impact on the amount of carbon emitted. Benjamin, I am going to continue on with my slides for now, and I will get to your question/comment in just a little bit, okay? Shout out, though, about plug-in solar. Utah just did an amazing thing where they passed state legislation unanimously to allow plug-in solar in their state. We are going to see balcony solar panels and home battery systems abundantly throughout the United States within the next 5 years, for sure.
Much to say about that, Erin. Yeah.
This will replicate a lot of what's going on in Europe, but of course with US nuance. In Europe, they have balcony solar, and I think we will have that as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end, but I like that too. So we talked about forming a CCE. In Arizona, the absence of a legislation that allows us to form it ourselves or at the city and county level means that we need to get city and county support and then take it to get regulator, ACC, and Arizona state legislature approval. This also includes getting financial backing because there will be pushback from the IOUs. They will not only out-lobby, but also out-mail us and tell people that the CCE is not a good idea because it will take their customers away. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So this yellow arrow is because we are struggling in this aspect. Cities and counties support community choice energy in Arizona. There are road mapping efforts going on. There are groups being invited from across grassroots, city and county movements, as well as at the utilities to lay out a technical roadmap to get everyone on the same page and say, this is what it takes, and this is why it's helpful. And then we need to take that to the state level. We need to negotiate with the utilities about exit fees. Well, if the CCE takes some of the utilities' customers, they need to make up that money somehow, and they will charge CCEs to do that. And then, of course, the CCEs need to hire experts in power procurement and experts in billing the customer and experts in innovative reinvestment. So forming a CCE, you have all of these different moving parts, but they amount to this innovative reinvestment portion, which is really good. I borrowed this from the Arizonans for Community Choice presentation. It's the Arizonans for Community Choice Power Pyramid. And it can show you about the CCE coalition that's going on in Arizona. So at the bottom, you have that legislative piece and the ACC. Above that, you have energy producers. So talking to people, making sure they understand what the CCE is and how impactful it will be. Talking with suppliers, data centers, talking with clean tech, talking with people about how CCE makes the grid more resilient. Talking with businesses about how they're going to save money and probably even make money because of a CCE. And of course, getting our grassroots folks together, making sure that everyone understands what a CCE is. And that's kind of what we're doing today. And talking to the cities and counties, making sure they understand the benefits of a CCE. Robert, I see your hand and I will get to it in 5 minutes. Thanks. Okay, so I want to talk about some challenges and opportunities with the utility specifically. So this isn't just for Tucson, this is for IOUs across the nation who are fighting against the CCE movement. The utilities, they resist this competitive model. They lobby aggressively to maintain exclusive control. But the opportunities for CCE are substantial for the communities and also for them. So regulatory challenges include that CCE reduces the IOU customer base, but the CCE pays that exit fee. Another challenge for utilities is that the IOUs lobby against CCE formation, and we have this problem that the current regulatory body and state legislative political climate in Arizona has a political commitment to oil and gas. I call it a political commitment because it is trending, but it is not reasonable. So despite these obstacles, we do have some opportunities with the utilities as well. Safety opportunities, and utilities are super risk averse, so hopefully they can hear these loud and clear. Let's build a CCE, and together we can meet rapid energy demand growth from AI and data centers. Let's do it together. Also, CCE owned, so that means they pay for them, they maintain them. CCE owned grid assets, like renewables, will balance the power grid. And finally, together, we grow the skilled workforce and an advanced energy economy. So there are business opportunities for IOUs when you open up the energy economy. I think they will be richer for it. I borrowed this slide from a really good presentation from Stanford University and Byron Vosberg. The CCA impact on green jobs is really cool. I love that unions and trades are building CCE contracted projects, and you can see here the CCEs working with those local unions in California. And this is a benefit for both the IOUs and for the communities that have people employed. So let's talk about pitching CCE. This is kind of a long-winded slide here, but most importantly, this guy, he's telling his friends at the city county meeting or his friends at the technical board meeting at the utility, you can do this. It's possible. CCE is your community's path to net zero goals and reducing electricity bills by 15 to 25%. Today, that CCE buys bulk power from 80 to 100% renewable sources using long-term contracts. Tomorrow, it will use those profits to build out thousands of small solar storage and smart devices. CCE-built microgrids will keep critical services running and homes powered through grid outages. 100% renewable energy is profitable and necessary for the survival of humankind. You can do this. Okay, stay focused, everyone. I would like to ask Robert about his question. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, am I on? Yeah, I'm
Yep,
on.
you're on.
I just wanted to emphasize the point you made about beginning with cities and counties. Here in Tucson, we've seen some amazing changes with our city council opposing Project Blue, the proposed data center that was to come into Tucson. It's also been very much more aggressive in approaching TEP with regard to the ongoing negotiations over the franchise agreement, the 20-year franchise agreement that's still in limbo, and the associated energy cooperation agreement that the city is proposing TEP adopt. I think that the biggest opportunity we have in Arizona is to get the cities and counties, the elected officials, supported by the grassroots and the communities, to stand up to the local power system. The CEO of Tucson Electric Power is also the chairman of the board of the Southern Arizona Chamber. So not only are the IOUs resisting any changes in utility delivery systems, they're also embedding themselves in the economic development power structure. And I think as a part of the strategy to get CCE enabled in Arizona, we need to couple that strategy with a broader economic development strategy. If cities and counties can take charge of leading in economic development strategies and overcoming the weakness of our local chambers in really advocating good economic development strategies, I think that we would be moving this agenda along.
Absolutely.
Because
Through carbon neutrality plans, climate action plans.
The reason Project Blue got as far as it did and got the county to unfortunately allow for this rezoning and change of this sale of land is because the county was under the impression that Project Blue was the biggest economic development opportunity that we've seen in a decade.
Yeah.
In my view, and I think in most of us who are supporting CCE, is that CCE is the biggest economic development opportunity going forward because it has so many impacts in terms of not only electricity competition, but also bringing in all of the suppliers, all of the skill sets, all of the economic activity that would ensue if we had more community choice and community control. So I totally want to support this idea that the cities and the counties should be our target for getting the job done, at least getting it beyond the resistance that the traditional economic development community has been providing, because they're going to be opposing this.
Yep. Thank you, Robert. And Russell, I see your hand. And Benjamin, I know that you also have a comment. We will get to all of those comments in about 2 minutes. So pitching CCE is really important. Pitch it to your counties and cities. Go out there, go to their meetings, tell them about it. They have time during their meetings just so you can speak to them. So feel free to do it. Like I said, you can do it. Stay focused. I want to look at a case study, and I'm looking at Marin Clean Energy because I am particularly fond of the way their CEO, Dawn, speaks. I think that she is really community oriented and she's a great program manager. So one of the quotes from Dawn that I like a lot is, "We just celebrated our 15-year anniversary, but I think the key is that we're not paying shareholder profits and we're publicly accountable." So Dawn contributes their entire success to public accountability. That's great. Marin Clean Energy has powered 1.8 million people. So that's just one CCE in California has powered 1.8 million people. It has reduced 500,000 metric tons of CO2. So that's quite a lot of metric tons of CO2 saved by one CCE in California. And also they have reinvested 40 million, so nearly $500 million into their own community. Here are some examples of that investment. Over 7,000 green jobs for one CCE, right? $19 million in local employment and sponsorships. 14.5 million in energy resiliency. So talking about those microgrids, battery plus energy storage, keeping people cool during the hottest months. They have deployed 200 off-grid portable batteries to medically vulnerable residents. 57 million has gone to energy efficiency funds that are distributed. They're doing their bookkeeping wisely, and they're generating revenue and distributing it in energy efficiency funds. And 80 million in energy bill savings. Congratulations, Marin Clean Energy. So we're going to round out this talk today with a lot of questions and comments. Before we do that, I wanted to let you know that you can get involved. You can email me directly, Erin and Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance at gmail.com. You can also email Arizonans for community choice directly. So you can see some groups here, Arizona Grassroots Support, go to them if you would like to get involved. National Support, go to them if you would like more information about CCE and why it's great. All right, I'm going to end there, and let's start our comment section with the raised hands and then go to the chat. So I think, Benjamin, would you like to go first?
Well, certainly. Thank you very much for this presentation today. And anyone can turn my camera on. I'm not that ugly. Basically, yes, my comment is that oftentimes the most underreported story in all of these scenarios is just the fact that technology and in terms of consumer choice really have just exploded in the last few years with things like these battery boxes that anyone can buy. They're UL listed. They are literally plug and play that you can just snap together things that look like miniature versions of the very same type of connections we have on our electric cars now to charge them. And here in rural Arizona, I know a lot of people who are already off the grid, much like, unfortunately, like compared to Tucson, where TEP and I think city government have, I don't know, I wouldn't know if the word collude makes the point, but if I were to ask someone in Tucson city government, may I disconnect from TEP? I have 20 kilowatt hours of storage, and by the way, I also have a new EV that has 50 kilowatts of storage. I have solar. They wouldn't let you do it. In some of the rural communities, they would say, sure, go ahead. So, you know, some of the capture that utilities have in larger cities, Tucson, and I'm not sure, perhaps Phoenix, doesn't really allow for these new technologies to take place. I don't know. That's just sort of like a generic observation.
Thanks, Benjamin. I really appreciate your observation. And I want to highlight something you said about the UL certification. You said all of these new batteries have UL certification. UL is a safety and standards certification, but the certification that you want to look at is not a UL certification. It is a SunSpec Alliance certification. And the reason I say that is because SunSpec Alliance, sunspec.org, they do interoperability and communications certifications. So the UL SB 1741 mark that says, yes, this is safe, it will not catch on fire, that's great. But if that device cannot communicate with other devices, you are wasting money. Not only that, if the battery supplier goes out of business, you will not be able to connect that battery to anything else. So the SunSpec Alliance certification, SunSpec is the standards body for interoperability and communication standards across the world. It's a global standards body that writes these standards that are taken up by Australia, by India, by Germany, Poland, Denmark. The list goes on, Canada. So SunSpec is the place. If you are building a home system, look here, because this is going to be interoperable. This is going to tell you exactly how your product hooks up. So for all the nerds on this call, Russell, I'm looking at you. Not only does SunSpec certification show you like what type of products there are, but it also shows you their protocol statement. So if you are into engineering, you can hook up your own systems and work with them with these protocol statements. So, okay, talking about Russell, go ahead.
So is SunSpec a nonprofit? I think I saw
Yes.
.com there. It is a nonprofit?
.org. It is a nonprofit,
Oh, okay.
sunspec.org. It's a nonprofit trade
great.
association. I just put it in the chat.
Excellent. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm not very familiar with it, so I'm glad you brought that up. So regarding Lee's questions about CCE and Muni, why don't we just go with the Muni? Because it would essentially that would be the best of all worlds. There are a few points I would make. One is the city doesn't probably even want to do a Muni. Okay, so are you going to get a city that doesn't want to do it to actually do it? The city would probably want to do it once they did a CCE for a while. And then they would say, oh, well, this isn't that bad. We thought it was going to be worse than this because it's easy to set up a CCE. There are over 400 of them that have formed since like 1998, I think, and the vast majority in the last 10 years. So the other thing is going back to Ben's plug and play and all the options that come out of that. There are going to be a lot of really great options, and those are going to cut into TEP's revenue. And when that happens, TEP's going to reduce its bond rating, or the bond raters are going to, like Fitch's and Standard & Poor's and Moody's will degrade them, or downgrade them, I should say. And then their stocks will go down. They will be easier to do a municipal challenge with at that point, because we'll be able to buy them for a lower price, maybe 20 cents on the dollar if they go down in value quite a bit, or 50 cents on the dollar, something like that. But right now you're talking $2 to $4 billion in my perspective. GDS said $1 to $4 billion. And then, so I think Ben's plug and play thing, which sounds like a toy almost, plug and play, it's going to become a real serious, challenge to the utilities.
Yeah.
And then we should wait until TEP's valuation goes down, and then consider doing, after we have that CCE experience, then considering doing the Muni. But we should be pushing for both at the same time too. But CCE makes the most sense in the short term, Muni in the long term more.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that, or you probably have different perspectives because of
I
Sunspec.
have a different type of perspective, but I agree with you. So, so I think the technology advancement that we're seeing in plug and play, and also uh, off-grid systems and virtual power plants will inevitably downgrade all utilities' credit ratings because they will no longer hold exclusive dominion over the way that power is distributed. So that is an inevitability. The market is changing, like I said in the beginning. I am talking about community choice energy because it's time for things to change. It's time technologically, it's time financially. I do want to talk about Lee's pirate comment about why not just have the municipality own all of the transmission lines. Well, let's think about revenue. When you make revenue from a community choice energy project, you can invest that into your own power generation projects as well. So I think municipalization is a good idea, but I think there are other opportunities with a CCE that might make it a better starting point, just like you said, Russell. Bruce, go ahead.
So a couple questions. So Erin, again, thank you for doing this presentation. Overall, I think it's been great. There are a couple of things that stumped me though. Your very first slide said that munis started going some time ago, and your examples were LA, San Antonio and stuff. And you said that in that first slide, municipal transmission. I've never heard of a municipal transmission system, and I wonder if you could tell us more about that, because I'm familiar with municipal distribution systems and municipalities contracting for power, but I'm not familiar with it. I'm curious if you could tell us a little more about municipally owned transmission systems.
Yeah, so I was trying to compare how the transmission and the generation are typically owned by two different groups these days, and how in the past it wasn't necessarily that way. The transmission and generation was owned by the utilities, but there were some cities, San Antonio, Tacoma, and LA, who never got an IOU. They did not go to investor-owned utilities. They had a municipal scheme from the very beginning. And that municipal scheme gave way to Puget Sound Power, which is, of course, a very important power generation group now. I can't say station because, of course, it's huge, but Puget Sound Power was owned, of course, originally by Tacoma, and then it grew. So that's what I meant. Back in the 1880s, these municipalization movements, as they were just the city saying, we have the money, we're going to do it ourselves.
But so are you saying that, that some of the CCAs that now exist, particularly in California, own transmission lines?
No, I don't think that any CCAs in California own transmission lines. However, they do own solar and battery storage, and they are producing virtual power plant options as well. I strongly believe that CCAs will move towards offering power to the grid, also through things like bidirectional charging and other advancements.
But that would be with
virtual power plants is the vehicle for that.
But that'd be within the distribution system, right? Not the transmission system.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I know that we are over time by about 5 minutes.
Let's give, I can see Rolf has raised his hand, Madam Erin. We can give him the chance to ask the question.
Actually, since there
and
are
Rolf, can you ask the question, please?
Yeah, sorry. Just from a different perspective here. Part of this program goes to international groups. And I'm curious from your knowledge level, which is quite extensive on the US, CCE prospects in Europe. Do you have any gut feelings on that? Or
it's a whole different landscape.
Yeah, exactly. And are there prospects or opportunities for that? Because it's highly monopolized, but not as corrupt as in the US. As a generality, you know.
Yes, so I was recently told about this book. It's Lorenzo Cristo's DSO model, and that kind of explains the DSO model in Europe, where the utilities operate the the distribution system, but they are paid as an operator, a distribution system operator on performance and value metrics instead of the shareholder model. So the European community energy system is a lot different also because you have this abundance of plug-in solar and battery storage. And there are communities who get together and aggregate their energy. But it's so different than America that we can't really compare what we need out of a community choice model with Europe.
Okay,
Well,
thank you very
there
much.
is one terrible parallel. The prices for energy in Europe are just going out of sight in some
Yeah, they're working on it.
times of the year, and it's pretty bad. I'm talking to you from Sweden, and we've seen price rises on electricity overnight that go from, X% or X amount per kilowatt hour to like treble, quadruple, quintuple in a day.
Yeah.
No.
Grid connection policy is heating up in Europe every day.
Yeah.
And I think that once Europe adopts certain standards and certain visibility requirements for their grid operation system for all the devices on their grid, they will find a way to make power cheaper. I strongly believe that Europe as a principles-oriented body, the European Union as a principles-oriented body will adopt standards that are important. I'm putting one in the chat for grid interconnection.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Erin, we have Stanfield. Stanfield, can you ask your question, please?
Yeah,
Stanfield?
yes, I'm still a little bit confused. As I recall, the diagrams and such that we were looking at a while back, not on this call, but in time, showed that for a CCE, the only thing that would not be owned would be the distribution. So I'm really confused about the transmission lines because my understanding was that does get owned by the public in a CCE. That it's about we get to choose what we want in terms of generation of energy and the transmission of that to Tucson, and then at that point is where the IOU takes over and does the distribution.
So CCEs procure energy, but they do not own the wires. I'm going to show you a slide from the Arizonans for Community Choice group, just because I think that this makes it really clear who owns what. So, okay. So the CCE or CCA buys the electricity on behalf of the city or county, and the IOU under the CCE structure delivers the energy and maintains the grid. So that means those wires. And then the customer gets to choose whether they buy from this.
So it doesn't separate out the transmission lines from the delivery lines. It just sees them all the same. Okay.
Wires. Yeah, that's why I've been saying transmission and distribution. Try to not get in the weeds too much, but basically the wires are still owned by the IOUs. And it is essentially a shift in responsibility, right? The IOUs obviously cannot take care of ratepayers very well, but they can take care of their transmission and wires if they are adequately supervised. So, so the IOU would take care of those wires, and the CCE would take care of the rates.
Thank you.
All right.
Any question? Any question from the listener side? Any question? Perhaps it seems we don't have any question. So, Madam Erin, you can continue.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining me, staying past the hour, and contributing to this discussion. It's worthwhile to educate everyone about this potential and possibility. And I hope that my discussion today has helped you understand it, or at least empowered you to go out and talk to others. Again, if you would like to get in touch with me, my email address is erin.nazca@gmail.com. I'm putting it in the chat. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Erin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you,
Thank
Elda.
you, Kevin.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us all the way from Africa, Kevin. Very cool.
Very cool.
Uh,
All right. I see people are still hanging around, but I'm going to wrap up with Kevin, and I will make sure that the people who are on this call receive the recording as well.
Thank you, Elda.
Yeah, that's
Thanks
a good
again,
point.
Erin.
And we will be sending it out to everyone who signed up, actually. So,
Yes, and it's a good presentation, and I really like to say thank you very much, Sister Erin, for that
Thank you,
wonderful
Brother Kevin.
for that wonderful presentation. Thank you. May God bless you. And I think you perhaps you need to work on the policy framework and the structure going forward, because it's the CC is a
Yeah. Uh-oh, I think I
yeah,
lost you.
just an
actually
observation which,
uh,
that throws in something which is quite interesting.
yes.
Leaving the transmission cost to the IOUs leads to, in Europe, especially in Sweden, exorbitant charges on the part of the IOUs, if you want to say they're equivalent. What happens in Sweden is you have fixed rates and you have flexible rates. The flexible is for the price, the usage amount of electricity, of energy. The fixed rate is for the transmission of moving that electricity across your wires in simplified form. And they are pushing that price up exorbitantly as well, claiming all sorts of things. And they're run by, they're run for profit. And we're stuck with them because they're a monopoly. And it's
I'll have to
really,
ask. I have a really good Swedish client right now who works with E.ON and the other large grid operators in Sweden and then Northern Europe. And
Yeah.
so I'll ask him more details about that, because, you know,
Yeah.
that's not what you would expect from Sweden.
yeah, exactly.
And they have
I
all that
mean,
geothermal, right?
oh, we are getting gouged. And it's, we hardly use any electricity because we're on solar, but here's what happens as an example. We produce electricity off our solar panels. We send it into the fixed system, the transmission, and we get charged for sending it to them because we're using their lines, and we get charged when we use our electricity that comes back to us off those lines. So it's like a double whammy and penalty, even though we're producing more electricity in our household than we use.
Yeah,
So it's a rigged system.
it
And-
is. Yeah,
and-
both
and
sides.
the only way out of
It
it-
reminds me of Enron, how Enron charged it going both ways.
Yeah, so we're stuck. And you can't get out of it unless you have your own battery system, which is disconnected from the grid. I
Right.
don't know all these words because I haven't thought about it.
Yeah,
But
I mean, me either. I always, when I think of transmission and distribution, I think of it as one kind of thing, wires. And now the people on the call were asking like, oh, but that's the distribution and not the transmission. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's just the wires.
yeah.
It's somewhere in there.
Yeah, but the wires are the part that it goes through. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Thank you so much, both of you. I have to get running.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
again
you.
for rescheduling
Great.
this presentation. I was sick as a dog last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and
So,
that's understandable. And thank you for giving it, and very sharp on a lot of points.
so
that's
great.
good.
So glad.
Yeah, good. And thank you
Thanks.
too, Kevin. Good.
Thank you, Kevin.
Take care.
Thank you.
Sleep
Thank
Bye.
you.
well
Thank
out
you.
there, whatever time it is.
Bye.
So perhaps
Bye.
I'll share my email with you, and I will keep on in touch. Going
Yeah,
forward,
we're also
we'll
connected
discuss.
on LinkedIn.
Thank you. We are connected on the LinkedIn here. So let's communicate in the LinkedIn, please. Thank
Let's
you.
do it. Thanks,
Yeah,
Kevin.
thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.